Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandal and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and I'm joined with Deb
Shorter.
Deb Shorter, a publisher or a publicist, or what are you?
I'm a published author.
You wrote a book.
Yeah, I wrote a book. Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is a very interesting book. On the back of it, we'll just start off here saying that millions of people pay for their welfare programs. And the question is, do you know where your tax dollars go? Who gets the benefits and who does not? The answers will surprise you. And you take us on a mind-bending journey into a world of welfare. Well, I'm sure this is going to be an interesting show. Now, you've worked for the welfare department, haven't you?
Yes, I was a caseworker for 10 years. And I worked for the federal government for a little bit, and then I worked the rest of my 10 years of service for the Concord District Office as a caseworker. So I've done this firsthand. And I'm actually the only character in the book that's real.
Fantastic.
So.
Wonderful. Now, the name of the book is An Eye into Welfare, Giving Away Your Tax Dollars. Okay. Well, off camera, we were talking a little bit about the stereotypes. When people are all upset about the system, you know, the abuses of the system where, you know, mother living with boyfriend, the whole 9 yards, and just manipulating the system, and everybody's pulling their hair saying, you know, how is she getting away with this, or how is he getting away with this? Talk to us a little bit
Well,
about
a lot of people, just as I did, when I first became a caseworker, I assumed that the TANF, which is Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, and that's the stereotype that you're talking about, was where the abuse took place in the welfare system. And that's not true at all. In fact, they're the only ones who are required to contribute. Probably where the least amount of abuse goes on is in the TANF program. Where the largest amount of abuse goes on, and that's where the reason why I wrote the book, is in disability. Disability's gone amok, and the whole entire country it has. So it's not just a New Hampshire problem, it's a social problem in the entire United States. And people are, right now there's so many people, there's probably, you know, just in my town alone, you know, several, and you'll find many people in different places, they're all on Social Security disability, because that is their out. They don't have to contribute, they don't have to work, they don't have to do anything, and they get full benefits. It's sort of like getting a, you know, I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that are truly disabled, or that they have,
But
you
if
know,
you're going to look for fraud, you're going to look
But if you're going to look for fraud, look into disability.
Okay. So, again, you worked for 10 years?
Well, 10 years total. I worked 3 years in a federal grant program before I went 7 years as a caseworker.
What started opening your eyes?
Interview after interview after interview. The reason the first chapter in the book talks about complain, 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 and because, you know, the clients would always complain that they didn't get enough, or you know, it was unfair. No matter how it worked out, it was unfair. And then I'd meet people on you know, in my regular normal life, I would meet people, and, you know, the taxpayer was mad. And they would say, you know, it's just not fair. It's all not fair. So everybody's complaining about it, but nobody really knows what they're complaining about. So that's why I wrote the book. It makes it very clear about where we are in welfare in America, what we've created as a welfare society in America. And I do a little bit of history about how it all started. And it was originally intended, you know, during Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Before that time in America, it was covered by churches and, you know, community programming and things like that. But then it went into a state and federal level, and it was created so, you know, we had a lot of men who were dying in wars, so we had a lot of widows with children. So it was created for those people, for the elderly, and for the truly disabled. And now those are the people I deny more than anyone.
On what basis?
Usually over income for the elderly, $5 over, $1 over. People who have paid into the system are the ones that I denied more than I did anyone.
Now,
Or military families.
you denied not because you were a mean person, but because this
You
is...
follow policy. It's,
Yeah, okay.
it's not a caseworker's decision as to whether they deny you or not. You either fit into the policy or you don't fit into
Now,
the policy.
who makes up these policies?
The government.
Okay, which part of the government? Is it the state, or is it the federal, or is it a combination?
You know, it does, but it's actually both because, you know, like food stamps are a federal program, but they are distributed by the state.
Right.
And there's a lot of those programs within the state balance. So, yeah, they're established by people that are making laws.
So, under what auspices in New Hampshire? Is it Health and Human Services?
It's all Health and Human Services. All of it will come under that title.
Okay. And so they'll receive federal funding for these programs, or
Yes.
matching fundings?
And when I spoke about welfare, I used the word welfare because that's a taboo word now. You're not supposed to be using that word. So, but I used the word welfare because in its original form, it was all of it.
Right.
And so now it would be called Health and Human Services.
Health and Human Services, or
But the
government
average Joe
assistance.
has always called it welfare, and it always will be called welfare by the average taxpayer.
Now, are insurance companies involved with this at all?
No.
So if somebody's disabled and they're receiving an insurance premium or insurance benefit, can they still apply for welfare?
They can, and it always depends on whether, you know, how much income they've generated.
Mm-hmm.
So all the programs are based on income.
Let's talk dollars. You said something about a $5 million.
Yeah. At the time, I left the state in 2009, and at that time, the average caseworker, and I talk about this in the book too, the average caseworker was writing around $5.5 million in benefits a year. And so you figure we have about 6 DOs in the state of New Hampshire. And, you know, some are smaller and some are bigger, but they average out between a dozen and about 18 caseworkers. So when you start doing those numbers, you see that this is a really big expense. Now you go to the federal level and you look at the disability that goes out with Social Security. That's why in the book it was so important to end this book with solutions to the issues, you know.
So in the last chapter you have 10 solutions.
Yeah, in the last chapter I have 10 solutions.
To what, though? For the average person?
For welfare as a whole.
Okay.
And you're looking at it as human services.
All right, so this is for you read the book, you look at the last chapter, and it's going to give you an idea on what you can do as an individual who's not on welfare, right? How to fix the problem.
Well, I don't know if it's the individual that's not on welfare. My solutions came through all my years of experience. You know, the first chapter is why I wrote the book, and then it's 11 case studies, which are very interesting, and I did my very, very best to try to touch each kind of case that comes into the welfare office, and who gets denied and who doesn't get denied. And then on the 13th chapter, I talk about the different 10 solutions.
Talk to me a little bit about accountability, the agencies.
Well, that's one of the 10 solutions.
Oh. Okay.
So, and I call it contribution, not accountability. Because accountability, I think, puts a lot of pressure on someone meeting a criteria. Whereas if someone has to be accountable, it's totally different from contributing. And I think that will help take a lot of the stigma off of welfare as a bad thing. Because instead of saying to someone, and I talk about this in the book, instead of saying to someone, what do you do? Because in America, we always want to know, what do you do for work? That's usually the first question you ask some stranger that you're talking to. But if someone says to you, oh, well, I get welfare, there's a stigma about that surrounds them. But in my 10 solutions, it releases that stigma because everyone would be required to contribute. And the weird part about that is as a caseworker, the people who contributed the most were the people who are most disabled. So the people who are in wheelchairs and, paraplegics and quadriplegics and, blind people, and they were the ones who did more community service than any of my other clients, hands down.
Guys in the military, guys and gals in the military.
Well, the military always gets denied, which is another sad thing, and I talk a little bit about there, that we should actually be giving the elderly and the military free food stamps. I denied so many elderly people and so many military families. You know, they're serving our country. They have a right to these benefits. You have a husband or wife that goes away from their home
while they're in service, they're being denied, their families are being denied?
Yes, because what happens is it's all based on poverty level. So if one spouse is working, usually that brings them above poverty level. So they're denied the food stamp base, not taking into accountability that, first of all, they're risking their lives for our freedom, or secondly, that they've lost a large amount of their income because none of the military people are making the same amount of money that they were making when they were working in the private sector in America.
Right. And they're risking their lives to protect your freedom.
You know, and yet they're the ones we deny. That was very heartbreaking for me. Denying the elderly and denying military families when usually typically a wife, but sometimes it was the other way around.
Right.
And they'd come in and say, but I don't have that $50,000 a year. And I'd say, I know. But it doesn't matter because you're making 27.
Right.
Do you see what I mean?
I do.
And that's just so wrong. There's nothing right about that.
Interesting. So, on accountability, keeping on that theme, how's the agency accountable? Who's the agency accountable?
The only cases that actually have accountability in the state, as you would call it, is the TANF cases.
Which is?
So temporary assistance to the needy families. And it's usually a single or a double family, dynamic. And they have to have children. And they go off to what we call an NHEP program, which is the New Hampshire Employment Program. And they work with them to either become re-educated or to get themselves into the working environment. So they have to contribute. If they don't contribute, they have to do volunteer work somewhere. And so they're the only ones contributing. Everybody else is just...
Now, in writing this book, were you considered to be a whistleblower?
Yeah, I'm surprised you said that. And I thought I would be. But no, I was really surprised at, at my book launch, a lot of people from the state came. I had around 200 people there, and a lot of them were state employees, and I have heard no negative about it because I tell the truth.
Right.
My characters are fictional, but the benefits that they receive, the caseworker that's there is me, and it really shows exactly how the system works. And, people, my testimonials on the back are all from people who worked in the system, or there's a couple taxpayers that they had do it, but every one of them agree it's right on target. This is exactly what it's really like.
You had a press release, and it had to do, and the title of the press release was Removing the Mask Off of Welfare.
Actually, it was ripping the mask
Ripping.
off of welfare.
Right.
Yeah, because people don't see it as it really is. And they're assuming that they're giving help to the elderly, the single parents or widowed parents, and the truly disabled. And those are not the people that we're
Why do you
servicing
think
anymore.
we ended this way, though? Why do you think the people that we feel should get it don't get it, and now it's going to the wrong people?
I talk about that in my book a lot, especially in the solution area. One of the solutions that I've come up with, and if you go through the 10 of them, it becomes very obvious.
By the way, please buy the book.
Yeah, and it's available at Amazon, and the book's flying off the shelves. It's just doing wonderful, and it's available in Kindle also.
Oh, wonderful! Wow.
But you were asking about, what is one of the solutions to be able to get this? Because what happens is, I think the system gets so big that they just start learning that, one of the problems that I really noticed was that it's so important for the states to do things in a timely and quick fashion. So in doing that, process timely. Well, you can't take humans out of human services. That's never going to work. There's not going to be any computer in the world that's ever going to be able to deal with the human condition. Right. And unfortunately, by moving it towards that avenue, the policy has forced the states to create the quickest and fastest way to process cases. And in doing that, you've lost the humanity of trying to help. So now everyone just tries to fit into the form where they're going to get the most benefits. We're actually trained, and not by any fault of the state employees at the welfare office or the people at the welfare office, but strictly by policy, that we're enforced to tell you all the benefits that you could be entitled to, instead of trying to help you to not get into a position where you're going to be so destitute.
Help you out of your situation into a productive life.
Correct.
I think of welfare. I think of welfare, and I think, I see these commercials, and no offense, and I really don't mean this as an offense to people that are in the hub around. You know that little wheelchair?
Yeah.
The commercial says, and I got mine for free. And so there's a handout somewhere, or there's a benefit somewhere that some people who maybe they just don't want to walk. Maybe they should lose 200 pounds or something. And I'm just going with the stereotype a little bit in my mind. I'm thinking, why is this benefit free? Who's paying for this for these people? Am I off on track?
No matter what you look at for benefits, it's always paid by the taxpayer.
Right.
So, that's where the frustration comes in for the taxpayers.
They're encouraging, though. It seems like I got mine for free.
Oh, they're absolutely encouraging it. It makes you laugh a little bit sometimes, but it's not a laughing matter by any chance, because this is literally going to make Social Security go bankrupt. It's going to, and it is. I mean, this is not anything new to anybody. I'm not opening up a door of revelation. I'm just opening up the fact that people are not seeing it as clearly as it really is.
Social Security is not sustaining itself. There's a big lie about that.
And disability is a huge chunk of it, a huge chunk of it.
So,
do you know that if you become disabled in this country, you actually get more money than the man who worked for 40 years?
That's incredible.
That's wrong, is what it is. And it's very frustrating and it makes people angry. So I have one story in here that will enlighten you a little bit. It's called lazy-itis. And it used to be a joke among caseworkers because we'd say, oh, they came in to apply for lazy-itis. And in my story, this young boy comes in with his friend, and he's like a really fit, athletic boy, and he's obviously got nothing wrong with him. He comes in to apply for disability because he's borderline personality disorder, or he has some mental things. Oh, he had bad knees. In the story, he has bad knees. And he gets disability. So he gets money every month. He gets food stamps every month. He gets eligibility for housing. He gets all his medical paid. And he's never worked a day in his life. And that's not uncommon. It happens every day, a million times a day.
Yeah, that will get a lot of people mad.
So disability is where it's gone amok.
And it seems to me, I just heard today on Fox News that a lot of seniors don't understand that a lot of their benefits because of Obamacare are going to be denied. And there are many medical facilities out there that are not going to take Medicare because of the Obamacare. And they got to pay for it somehow, the whole 9 yards. And here's another draw from the Medicare. It's amazing. And the seniors should be really upset about this.
Yes, they should.
Right.
And, we're not young chicks sitting here, so we're moving up to that era, and the baby boomers are already coming in. It can't sustain itself because these other people aren't working. And I'm not saying that all young people aren't working, and I'm not saying any of these things in general, but the numbers are huge.
And under this administration...
Why work when somebody's going to take care of you?
I'm a little upset with this administration right now because from what I understand, they've encouraged welfare and recipients over the last... It's grown exponentially.
Oh, yeah. The caseworker load is double what it was when I left in 2009.
So they're
probably writing 10 million each.
There's a dependent class growing more and more, and less providers are putting into the system.
And they feel it's an entitlement. They feel it's owed to them.
Right, and they're getting this for free with complaints attached.
I have another story in there about a girl. It's Zadie, this girl that's in there, and yeah, she's this atypical, she's on disability. She gets disability for each of the children, but she comes in wearing a tailored suit, manicured hands. She's driving an Escalade. In fact, that's the name of the story. It's only an Escalade. And just raping the system. But you'll find that this is true with a lot of these disability cases. Now, I have no problem with helping someone who's disabled, and neither does any other caseworker. No. But when it becomes an excuse not to be productive, so my solution is that everyone has to contribute. It doesn't matter who you are. And we need to bring it to the local level, because one thing I really noticed as a caseworker, and I'm glad this happened to me after I left the welfare office. I started writing the book because it took me 2 years and 7 months to write this book. And during one summer, I got a little bit cabin fever because I live way out in the mountains, and I write in this little cabin called the Pen Den. And I got a little bit of cabin fever, and I started working at the little community store in my catchment area that I worked in. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the people that facilitated that community store were also clients of mine for years and years and years. And when they came in, I realized 90% of them were lying. Blatantly, and they had no conscience over that. And I also realized that at the local level, I was much more aware of what their actual living circumstances were.
Right.
And what income was in that household. And I talk a lot about that in the book, about how to, bring it. You need to still have the state caseworkers, and you need to still have the federal, balloon over it. But what you really, really need is to bring these caseworkers out of the buildings where they're just coming in by the numbers, let them sit down with a team with the town. So when they're reviewing a case, Mary, that's the town clerk, says, no, John lives there, and his mother, and the other people, and all of that income should be counted prior to any of these benefits being issued.
Right.
Now, you're going to have some of them that are going to slip through the holes, but not like now.
Well, it seems even under the Clinton administration, there was, you had to contribute.
Yes, there was some sense of contribution.
There was some sense, and now that was totally
disability, you
eliminated
don't.
now. Totally gone.
And disability, even with the Clinton administration, you didn't have to.
Really?
With disability, because, you were disabled.
Disabled.
But then I become a caseworker, and the disabled who were truly, like I said, truly disabled, those were the people who did the most. Everyone has something to contribute. Not to mention, people get mad at these people for coming in and applying for these benefits and gouging the system and doing all. Don't blame them for a system that was created by the lawmakers that you hired, that have created policies that allow this mindset to take hold.
What specific New Hampshire laws do you know of any?
There's millions of them. So you would have to be a legislator to be able to pinpoint exactly what they are. Right. I only know policy that I dealt with the state of New Hampshire, because everything's run by policy, and policy, in fact, is law. And as you're dealing with these policies, they use policy because they try to avoid that whole "that's a law," but policy is law.
When agencies make a rule, they have the effect of law. Whether it's the courts or whether it's Fish and Game.
That's correct.
Whether it's Health and Human Services or the Education Department, these are rules that have the effect of law, and the voters didn't vote on those.
Yes, and don't be mad at, I would get very frustrated with clients. Don't be mad at clients that take advantage of a system that is created to be taken advantage of. Yep. Be mad when you're creating policy that is so high-winged and so out there that everybody's just learning how to fit in, so they can get a little bit of subsidized income for their home, or they can get the heating, or they can get the insurance. What happens if you bring it all to the local level, and you have the state workers in the local level, in the town halls, that are already being hated, that are already being paid? Pick up your laptops, get together, talk with the local police, have everybody at the same table.
And the 10 solutions are in this book.
The 10 solutions are in the book.
So again, get the book. It's an eye into welfare, giving away your tax dollars by Deb Shorter. Shorter. All right.
Shorter, opposite of longer. It's an easy one, Kevin.
Wonderful. Is there and you said you can get it on Kindle?
You can get a Kindle or, the paperback form. It's available on Amazon.com, and it's also available on my website.
Which is?
DebShorter.com.
DebShorter.com.
It's easy as that.
Deb, I want to thank you for coming on Speak Up, and we will see you on the other shows.
All right, great. It was very nice to meet you, and thanks for having me.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Please pick up the book. It's going to be a good read. Again, thank you for watching Speak Up, and we appreciate the sponsors for Speak Up, Aardvark Dean of Clean, and the Center for Redress of Grievances. Thank you very much, and until next week, we'll talk to you later.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.